What's going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Thank you guys so much for coming back to the channel, and if you guys are new, welcome. Today we are taking it to our Strand Hunter with a super fun build that I put together to pass the time here for some of these Strand builds, because there's a fine line for me in Destiny between meta, effective, and just for fun. There is a lot of builds that can fall into multiple of those categories, and I think that this one is definitely effective and fun. Maybe not all the way meta, because you got your typical stuff that you're using with your new abhorrent leaps, these Synthoceps with bonk hammer, stuff like that, but this double grenade build with Threadlings here is absolutely nasty for clearing ads and that Strand synergy just in general. Now, as always, starting with our abilities, aspects, and fragments, you can see our stats down here. We got that 100 resilience and 100 discipline for our grenades and our barricade. We're obviously using Blade Fury with our light and heavy attacks, so we can sever and then also suspend enemies. Now, for your abilities for barricade, totally up to you. I personally went with the rally barricade for this build here. A little bit smaller shield, but faster cooldown time. Same goes with the jump. You can really use whatever you're feeling. And for our melee, we only have Frenzied Blade. Now, for grenades, we're only gonna go with Threadlings for this build, because the other two in grapple and shackling, we already have suspend with throwing our barrier down, so I'm using these Threadling grenades to pair with that exotic chest piece in Armamentarium, so we can have that double grenade charge on this build. Now, when we move on to our first aspect over here, we got into the fray. So destroying a tangle or casting our super grants woven mail for our nearby allies. While we have woven mail, our melee regeneration is increased. So you will see if we're creating tangles everywhere with this build, having that woven mail up basically at all times, which makes us a little walking tank that just throws grenades out everywhere and has those Threadlings spread like wildfire. Now, like I said, we're going to get that melee back again because we're going to have woven mail consistently. Now, one of the reasons that I'm using the Threadling grenades is because we have Drenger's Lash right here, so when we activate our class ability, we create that suspending little ground ripple that also damages targets, so this is how we're going to use our suspend for this build, stunning those unstoppable champions, etc. Now, when we move on to our fragments, we're going to basically be doing three different things with this, giving our Threadlings more damage and increased range, getting our grenade back fast, and then also giving ourselves a woven mail a little bit easier with picking up orbs of power, and you will see in a second how they all play together. So like I said, we have our thread of evolution, so those Threadlings travel further and deal additional damage. Next off, we have thread of generation, so dealing damage whether it be with our ammo or with our grenades abilities. Our weapons don't matter, it's giving us grenade energy when we're dealing that damage, so we can spam those Threadlings. Now, we're also having thread of transmutation, so when we have woven mail, final blows create tangles, which pairs back into our aspect. When we shoot those, we're getting woven mail as well, and just those tangles are super nice. As you will see, we use them for some of our artifact mods as well. And last but not least, right here, thread of warding, so picking up that orb of power grants us that woven mail, which we get that nice protection, little bit of resilience if you will, and then we also get our melee back faster, so it's a nice little ability spam, plus we get so many things kind of proccing together. Now, when we move on to our weapons, really I went with two options here. First off, we have the Rufus's Fury, which has Demolitionist to give us back our grenade a little bit faster, as well as Paracausal Affinity, so it'll get more damage when we're getting defeats with Strand. Now, you could also do something like Perpetualis, which has Hatchling, or like our new Scout Rifle here, which also has Hatchling, which creates those Threadlings as well on defeats, so it's another way to get Threadlings with this build, but I personally went with Rufus's Fury here for that Demolitionist. Now, in our energy slot, went with Wave Splitter for that Void Burn, and this thing absolutely melts enemies inside of the PvE realm. Just felt like the perfect thing to pair with this build, creating orbs everywhere. And last but not least, we have that Circular Logic with Envious Hatchling, so we have those enemies defeating, getting ourselves more of those Threadlings around, plus we can proc Envious Assassin on our other weapons if we're using that to give us a nice little bit more ammo, and this thing will get juiced with ammo as well from getting defeats with our other two weapons. Now, moving on to our artifact mods, which are decently important for this build. First off, we have that Unstoppable Scout, so when we're using our Strand Scout in the kinetic slot, we can stop Unstoppables, but we do have our Suspend, so that is why I was going with one of those auto rifles, using the Overload Auto for both of those as well in our kinetic slot. Now, next off, it doesn't really matter. You can use authorized grenades, and Strand is super important right here with the multi-siphon mods, so we can have on that Void and Strand mods to give us orbs of power, which we're using for Woven Mail. Now, next off, we do have Volatile Flow right here for our Wave Splitter to do that anti-barrier, as well as Volatile Rounds for that ad clear. Next off, very important for our Strand and those tangles, like I said, Untangler. Destroying a tangle with a Strand weapon suspends targets, damaging them with that explosion as well. So all those tangles that we're creating via our fragments and our aspect, using that Woven Mail and everything, we're going to create a bunch of them. When we destroy them with our Strand weapon, it's going to create a burst which suspends everybody, making this, like I said, a very effective build. Now next, we also have this allied unraveling, so when we get those rapid final blows with our Strand weapons, we're also getting unraveling rounds, which is also effective for ad clear, and this build just keeps on going with that Strand synergy. And last but certainly not least, we are using that Thread Blast, so destroying those tangles with a Strand weapon gives a larger, more damaging explosion, which pairs perfectly with that Untangler, so we're getting a bigger explosion, doing more damage because of it, and also suspending more enemies because of that larger AoE. So when you move on to our armor, you can see with all of our weapons and those tangles how important that they are. Now, we are using the Void Strand Siphon, like I said, from our artifact mod with Ashes to Assets, so when we do get those grenade defeats with the double Threadlings, we're getting our super energy back on those defeats with Heavy Ammo Finder, so we can keep that circular logic up and procced at all times. Next on our list right here is our arms with Grenade Kickstarter, Firepower, and Bolstering Detonation. So those grenade defeats are giving us orbs of power as well, which we're using for that Woven Mail, as well as to create even more tangles for that suspension, etc. Bolstering Detonation gives us our class ability back when we do damage with grenades, and having that double allows us to get a lot of damage with those Threadlings, plus Grenade Kickstarter when we have that armor charge and we throw our grenade, we're going to get a nice juicy chunk of that ammo back and keep that grenade up at all times. Now, onto our Armamentarium. Obviously nothing too special about it besides giving us another grenade charge, but pairs perfectly with that Strand, giving us that Woven Mail, getting us all of those Threadling defeats, creating orbs of power and that Strand synergy. Now, for our mods on here, I'm going with one charged up to have that armor charge for us, so we can use that Grenade Kickstarter to get more energy back on our Threadling grenades. Now, this doesn't really matter in Harmonic Siphon because we don't really have too many enemies that deal Strand damage, so that resistance doesn't come into play, but this one right here, you can switch out for whatever you're going into, whether it be Sniper, Melee, or Concussive Dampener, and then you can choose if you want instead to use something like an Arc Resistant and a Void Resistant, just totally up to you, and depending on what activity you're going into. Now, when we move on to our boots, we got that stacks on stacks, so we get even more armor charge from picking up a single orb of power with recuperation and innervation. So when we pick up those orbs of power on top of Woven Mail and getting our super back, we're going to get our grenade a little bit faster, and then also recuperation to give us back our health. So it's a little extra survivability. Like I said, this thing is super fun and effective for the game. And last but certainly not least on here with this Artifice armor, we're going to have Reaper, so when we throw down that barricade to suspend enemies, our next weapon, Final Blow, is going to give us an orb of power. Plus we have Double Bomber on this to give us our grenade back even faster when we use our class ability. So you can see that nice perpetual feedback loop, throwing down our barricade to get Reaper to proc as well as Bomber. Then we can get all those suspends going on, use our Strand weapon to get those defeats, create Unsevering, create those tangles, create Woven Mail for ourselves, as well as all of those orbs of power that we're getting from defeats with Reaper, as well as all of our weapons are creating orbs of power, and our grenade defeats our creating orbs of power, so it is super easy to keep up this build as well, with woven mail up basically all the time, giving us our melee regen, and then it just plays into that strand synergy of tangles, shooting them to explode them, creating that suspension, getting our grenade back because of all that damage that we're doing with them, and then just keeps on going from there. Like I said, inside of Destiny, very, very fine line in my opinion between meta, effective, and then for fun. So this falls into that nice effective and for fun category. You could take it into raids when for that ad clear and all of that. It still will work. It just might not be as effective as something like Aberrant Leaps for GMs or something like that. But this thing still clears ads like a maniac and really isn't bad for juicing champions, something like that with Wave Splitter as well as Circular Logic. So hopefully y'all have just as much fun as I do with this build. Definitely feels almost like a Warlock with that double Threadlings on, or even a Hunter since they get the double grenades on the Strand subclass, but Warlocks with Swarmers and Threadlings feels very similar to this build right here. So again, thank you guys for that support. I truly, truly appreciate it. I hope y'all are having a great, great week, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.